Hey everybody, I just want to welcome everyone to our session we're having here on Agentic AI. I'm Dr. Gold. I'm Vice President of Academic Innovation and a professor here. I'm a philosopher by training, so my view of everything is slightly mental, but it's one of the things that I like to do is focus on the technology stuff. Our goal today is to get a sense of where we're at with Agentic AI, with autonomous agents and how they work and where they go and where we're going with this. And the reason we're doing this is that change is happening so rapidly, and everybody says that and has been saying that for a long time, but the pace of change right now is accelerated exponentially. A few months ago, we did we did one of these on chatbots, and it felt very cutting edge at the time, and just a few months later it seems kind of quaint. And that's how fast things are going. I've stepped back. I remember a couple of years ago I was running around kind of freaking out, telling everyone that AI is about to happen. Immersive computing is going to change everything we're doing. And it was that total Chicken Little experience where I'm running around saying the sky is falling and everyone's looking at me like I'm a lunatic, which I'm used to. I've been doing this technology stuff in education for 25, 30 years now. And I was part of a team that built the first regionally accredited PhD online back in 1998. So I'm used to being all enthusiastic about technology and everyone thinking, oh, you can't teach online. It's not possible to teach a course online or a program online, let alone developing Web 2.0 with social media and interaction. And now where we're at with AI and all the changes. Well, when ChatGPT came out, all of a sudden people realized I wasn't completely crazy, that actually this stuff is going to radically change everything we're doing. And what interests me, since we're a school of psychology in many ways, is why people resist this. And why there's this tremendous fear of change, which you have in general with people, is this fear of any kind of change. I'm doing it this way, but it's incredibly, it's almost amusing in a way to see what people, it's about trust, what people trust now. Those of us who were in the early days of the internet, who remember back then, people didn't. I don't trust what I read on the internet. I trust what I read in a newspaper, what I read in a magazine. Now, when I use AI, what I hear a lot is, well, I don't trust AI, I trust the web page. I don't trust what AI tells me about this medical issue, but when I go to webmd.com, that I trust. So people get comfortable and they start trusting stuff and they don't trust this. And that creates a sense of fear. And that's sort of one of the things that just personally irritates me a lot, the pride, I call it the pride of the Luddite. The person who doesn't want technology, doesn't want to adapt technology, and is really proud of it. I'm not going to use AI. I remember, we're old enough to remember the people said, I'm not going to use a computer. I like a piece of paper and a pencil. I like to feel the newspaper. Well, if you don't use a computer now and you're not on the internet, you can't do anything. And we probably all know people like that. And so for those of us who are enthusiastic about technological change and enjoy seeing the challenges of this, so much of our challenge is to help bring other people along with it and help, we used to call that crossing the chasm, help other people cross the technological chasm so that they're not as afraid, they're willing to embrace change. And that's what a lot of this is about. Now, at the same point, the same reasoning, there should be fear. And I'm actually very impressed and pleased with the level of fear. Because what bothered me tremendously back in the day, I'm talking the late 90s, Y2K period, was what I used to call happy talk. When a new piece of technology would come out, everyone was so excited. Look what you can do with this. And no one had any sense of how this stuff can go horribly wrong if you don't use it right. I remember the first time we had instant message in the workplace. Isn't this great? We can just message each other. Then I walk out to the employees, staff, and I see 5 different boxes open and they're just gossiping with each other. I'm telling guys, I can record this stuff. It's all recorded. And you had no idea. And I was talking earlier with a friend that when we started the first chat rooms in online education, I'd say 1999, 2000, we thought a great idea. We told the accreditors there'll be interaction in chat rooms. We'd open a water cooler where students could get around and talk. Well, we all know what happens. It all just degenerated into a food fight. We'd have one guy saying some really rude, horrible things and everyone would get upset. And we had no idea that this could go really wrong if you don't handle it right. Then we got to social media. and Web 2.0. And I don't need to tell you about that. We know the wonderful things social media does, but we also know the tremendous difficulties of social media for young people and, really with everyone. So now that we're going into a third phase of technological change here, and we're now moving with AI and agentic AI. Having a healthy fear is actually a good thing. So there's an element where people are at least willing to ask themselves, how could this go horribly wrong, as well as what amazing, wonderful things it can do. So the psychology of technological adoption is in itself a fascinating thing. Now, it's my job as AVP of innovation to try to take these kinds of things and bring it to people so we can at least get on the edge and start learning about it. Because there are only two places you're going to be right now. You're either on the cutting edge with this stuff, scrambling to keep up, or you're way behind. And the pace of change is happening so quickly. So that what today's event is about is we're going to be hearing first from Robert Strohmeyer. Two of the people I work with here of our alumni and students who are really just world class when it comes to understanding AI. We've been working together on this stuff for a while. Robert Strohmeyer is going to be giving us a complete overview of what is it? Okay, what is agentic AI? How does it work? What's going on? He's going to give us so by the time you're done with Robert, which is the core of this, we'll have some interactive stuff. We'll all get a good sense. We're going to know what this is, understand how it works, how does it make. And then Dr. Gordon Montgomery, who's a wonderful futurist who works with us. And I call him a futurist because he's got incredible vision of where the world is going with these kinds of things. After we understand what it is, we're going to see, okay, where is this going? This is going to be a short, tight 2-hour session. And I want everyone to walk out feeling like, I get it. I understand how it works. I know what we're talking about. I know where it's going. And I hope that will give everyone at Sofia and others who are attending the opportunity to embrace the technology and seize it for all the good things it can do and keep a close eye on the negative things that can happen, but to approach AI in a positive, constructive way. So with that, I'm going to turn the session over to Robert Strohmeyer. Robert's going to tell us about, is going to give us a detailed and long presentation on this. Robert, why don't you go ahead and take over for us?
Thanks very much, Dr. Gold. Yeah, so I'm Robert Strohmeyer. I have been working in technology for most of my adult life. I began as an early web entrepreneur in the mid-90s as the web was just kind of beginning to take off in the mainstream, and went on to a career in technology media for many years where I had the dubious distinction of being the person who led the transition from print publications to online. Many editors can thank me for shutting down their print magazines in the early 2000s, and then going from there to moving from static print articles to blogs on sites like Wired and PC World. So I've been doing this stuff for a long time. And about 15 years ago, I transitioned from tech media to working in mostly big data driven technology companies where I have led professional services teams largely in machine learning, big data analytics, and now increasingly generative AI technology. So what I want to share with you all today is an evolution that has been underway quietly in the background for quite some time. And what we are now seeing is that the shift from essentially, conventional standalone machine learning algorithms in AI to agentic AI is well underway. And this acceleration happened mostly within the past year. So I'll talk through a little bit of that history, and then I'll give you a demo of the way that AI agents have become mainstream enough that using free tools on the web, any person with a modest amount of web browsing and language skills can create autonomous AI agents to do tasks for them. So we'll do a couple of examples of those together after I give you a brief history of the rise of AI agents, both in the business world and in our personal and consumer lives. So before we kind of dive into that evolution, I think it's important to set the table with what an agent is, AI or otherwise. What do we mean when we say that something is an agent? What I believe we mean is really any entity that can perceive its environment in some way, reason and make decisions, and act on your behalf. What an agent does is act on your behalf. It is a person or entity that is capable of doing purposeful action for someone else. Um, I have here on the screen an image of a travel agent, and I think that a travel agent or a real estate agent, these are great examples of what an agent is and what an agent can do. And when you go to a travel agent, which very few of us do anymore because web automation has largely made that work obsolete. But before Expedia and various other sites, I think Expedia was the encyclopedia. But I'm thinking of travel websites made it very easy to go online and book travel for yourself and see all the available options. I use booking.com on a regular basis, and it does all the things that a travel agent used to do, and gives me the information directly to make those decisions. But a travel agent is a great example because they would have specialized expertise in travel. They would have access to a great deal of specialized data about places to stay, airlines, booking options, discounts, as well as be able to make recommendations and book you an entire itinerary for a trip. So when you hire a travel agent to do that for you, they use their specialized knowledge. They look at what's available for you to meet your parameters for the trip you'd like to take. They make decisions. In other words, you might make the ultimate decision about this hotel versus that hotel and which days you want to go on which tours or guided tours. But they're able to make decisions for you to bring you a filtered, curated set of options. Or you could leave it up to them and they could just book you an entire trip and send you the tickets. And so what we're really talking about here is the ability to be aware of the environment, make evaluations and choices on your behalf, take action for you, and then learn from your feedback, right? You might say, I think that hotel is too close to the, downtown. I'd like to be somewhere more pastoral or out on the coast or whatever. And they can take that criteria and then make adjustments for you. And that's really what any kind of agent is, whether it's a person or a machine. When we think about AI agents, what we're talking about are autonomous systems that can do those things, right? So what we're really talking about is programs, software that can interact with and perceive the environment, make reasoned decisions on your behalf, take actions for you to achieve specific goals that have been laid out for them, and then also adapt and learn from feedback. And in our demo, we'll look at exactly how these systems can do that. But the important thing is that, unlike a human travel agent or real estate agent, these can do all of this work without any direct human control. They use APIs or application programming interfaces on the web, which are basically just ways for programs to talk to each other across the web, to learn about what's out there on the internet, and act on your behalf. The evolution started slow, but it has rapidly accelerated. Over the last 10 years, we've really seen a dramatic acceleration in the evolution from human-only work to human-optimized work, where people usually in leadership positions, workflow architects, have designed systems, and you can think of an assembly line as a good example of this, where people went from individual workers doing an entire process end to end, to the Henry Ford style assembly line, where each person just did a small specialized unit of work and then passed that unit on to the next person who did the next task, and out at the other end of the assembly line, you get a car. Over time in knowledge work, a variety of approaches have evolved to further optimize the way knowledge work happens. An example of this is Kanban, in which you break down individual units of knowledge work so that each specialized worker in the organization can do their part, know what's in their queue to address, and then pass it to the next person. A good example of this might be, a technical support hotline, right? Where if you're having trouble with your computer, you can go to, the website and put in a support ticket, report a bug or whatever's going on. There's a bunch of people on the other end, probably distributed around the world, who would receive the ticket in a queue. Somebody would claim it, read and understand the problem, and then think about the best way to support you, and then give you a solution, whether that's over the phone or in an email or in a chat window. In the last probably 5 to 10 years, much of that work has increasingly been automated so that the human beings do the personal interaction with you, but a lot of the analysis and decision making happens with automation. And that has evolved from very rule-based automation to increasingly AI-driven automation, so that when you have a problem, you might chat first with an AI chatbot before it even passes you to a human being. Now, increasingly, we're seeing that companies are taking the human being out of the loop for a lot of these use cases, like technical support, and having AI chatbots do all of the chatting for you. Now, that's where things get much more complicated, because until very recently, just this last few years, since 2023, when OpenAI released ChatGPT, large language models that are capable of generating reasoned speech or reasoned text and giving you smart answers to whatever questions you might ask were unavailable. What accelerated us from machine learning, which is just the ability of algorithms to generate models that can make reasoned decisions about very discrete sets of data, structured data, to the large language models and generative AI now give us the ability, or give the technology the ability, to understand the problem in the context of all of the data available essentially on the internet. So we've seen in the last 18 months a radical acceleration from AI chatbots that have become increasingly intelligent, increasingly capable of understanding the questions you're asking, understanding what you want them to do, and then using all the available data that they have, including connecting to other systems across the internet, to perform tasks. And now they're also able to essentially interact with each other. And this is where the concept of agents or AI agents in this context that we're talking about today really comes from. These are highly specialized AI models. In many cases, each individual agent can only do one very small task, and it's optimized to do that task really well. Then you can use other agents or AI interfaces to invoke those. So you might have a chatbot in an application that, an example from my own daily work life is, you might have software at work that has a chatbot that can browse all the data on the entire network for your company. And you might want to book time off for April. So you're thinking, I want to make a trip. I want to book some time off in April. You can chat to the chatbot and say, hey, I want to take a vacation in April. Find out if I have enough available vacation time. And if so, go ahead and book me time off in these dates. And the bot will understand what you're asking, check the HR systems and make sure you have enough time off available, and then go ahead and book the time off in those systems for you. Send an approval confirmation off to your boss or the human resources department, get that approved, and there you go. It's booked. Now your vacation is on your calendar. So that's just one kind of small example, but there are many, many, and we'll look at several of those today. Let's talk a little bit more about the evolution from really we'll call it 100% human work, but we're going to start in the 1960s to the 1980s, right? Service work was mostly was entirely human driven. Computers existed, but the average even knowledge worker in the 1980s didn't have access to anything like the internet. And so they would have to look up information. They'd have to use their specialized expertise in their field to be able to parse that information and make decisions to do their work. As the internet came into being, we started to see the ability to search the web for ourselves and find a tremendous amount of information on our own online. Email, is an example of technology that radically accelerated our capability as knowledge workers. But most of the actual efficiency came from defining those tasks and just cutting down the amount of time it took to either retrieve information digitally or send information to somebody else. Going from mail to faxes to email was a radical revolution. But humans weren't just in the loop, humans were the loop, right? That ultimately somebody would have to manually go get information, verify they had the right information, and then pass that information to somebody else. And somewhere within that flow, decisions get made by people. The primary goal was to, create digital acceleration for regular human work. Now, in the early 2000s, we started to see the internet reach a state of maturity that the people who made software needed to create ways for one piece of software to talk to another, right? So, and Amazon is a good example, right? Amazon uses a variety of these application programming interfaces to connect to third-party systems, and including its own systems, because it's such a massive piece of software. Amazon isn't one app. Amazon is thousands of apps connected to each other by APIs, and that's how it's able to do customization of recommendations for merchandise you might want to buy. That's how it's able to figure out how to ship something to you, find you the best price, and things like that. And another example that many people find creepy, but that is pervasive and you can probably relate to, is you look at a listing for, let's say, a pair of sneakers on Amazon, and then later you're browsing the web, you're maybe looking at Facebook or Instagram, or you're looking at a news site, and you see an ad for those same pair of shoes. That's APIs at work. When you look at that pair of sneakers on Amazon, Amazon logs that, knows you might be interested in those, and then uses APIs to connect to the advertising networks out there on the internet, which then know to serve you on your computer because you're cookied. They can serve those ads to you on other sites. So that's APIs talking to each other across the internet. And this has become completely pervasive at this point, right? Almost every application of any significance has an API of some kind that can be used to connect to other applications. And so technology companies take advantage of this so they can partner with each other. Different applications can work with each other. Data from one application can get into the others, and so on. And we're increasingly seeing the the interconnection of our digital experiences so that different apps on your phone know the same things about you. This can be creepy, but it can also be a benefit. So, these tend to be rule-based until very recently, right? The way APIs would work is some programmer would decide which data within the application they wanted to make available to other programmers or other applications. And they would write an API and they'd create a document they put somewhere on their support website or developer website that other programmers can go look at and say, oh, there it is. There's the API for the data that I want to connect to and retrieve from this application. A good example is, again, travel websites, right? Like booking.com has an API that other developers can use to retrieve booking information or hotel availability information and make bookings. And usually there's some contractual agreement in place so that when one company uses booking.com to book a listing, they get paid on a kind of per booking basis or something like that. There's usually commission structures between them. Now, an example of this at work would be workflow orchestration between different systems. So like in a sales organization, they might use salesforce.com to track all of the different accounts that they sell to, the different customers, the people in those accounts, what they've purchased or what they're interested in, where they're at in the sales cycle, how far along in the decision-making process they are, and things like that. And then the marketing team will be using a different piece of software, right? Something like, maybe HubSpot or Marketo or something like that. And they want to send out marketing emails to people or run advertising on the web targeted to people in specific companies. In order to make sure they're targeting to the right people, the marketing program needs to talk to the sales program to retrieve all the data about those accounts and opportunities. And then the marketing team can set up automation so that when a deal gets to a certain stage, then an advertising campaign, an email campaign will get created, and emails and ads will get shown to people who work in that company to sell to. In the consumer world, a lot of us have apps, like we have Apple Watches, we have iPhones, we have smart home appliances around the house, and many of these can connect to our Google calendars and to Gmail, send us emails and show us upcoming events, give us notifications when we get an email or when we get a text, or when our heart rate goes above a certain level, whatever that is. These all happen, those inter-app connections happen through APIs. These have tended to be, as I said, rule-based. So somebody has to actually write the rules for what causes those alerts to take place. In other words, it is deterministic logic. Now, this is the part that has really shifted in the last couple of years with generative AI, where it's going from being reactive rather than reasoned, rule-based, when an event happens, the same response to that event will always happen, to reasoning-based technology, right? So machine learning, together with natural language processing, which is what you experience whenever you interact with ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Claude or any of these large language model LLMs. These are processing natural text or even speech. They're using machine learning and deep neural networks to reason about the input And these are often things like AI co-pilots, right? I mentioned ChatGPT and Claude. Many applications now have an AI co-pilot built directly into them, and we're going to interact with one today in this demo. So the the impact of this in knowledge work has been that finding information isn't just easier. Often you don't even have to go find it yourself, right? So that a person can literally just ask the bot to go find the information they want, right? The bot can then generate a summary of what it found, make recommendations about what information is going to matter to you. You can ask follow-up questions and give it instructions to refine the summary that it gives you, and in many cases use it to create a report. Now in Google Apps and in Microsoft Office, you can say, pull me the last 2 months of sales data and generate a revenue forecast report for me. And you don't have to say a lot more than that. The LLM, in the case I'm exemplifying, might be Microsoft Copilot, will simply go find the spreadsheets that contain that data. And it might ask you clarifying questions along the way, but for the most part, it'll just do what you asked and generate a report. And you can actually get an output of a spreadsheet or a Word document or even slides or whatever to go with it. An example of that is that I used Google Apps to generate this presentation, and along the way I wanted some art to go with my text. So rather than go search the web for relevant pictures, I just used Google Gemini built directly into the Google app, and I chatted with it about what kind of images I want. So I was like, give me an image of robots and intelligent agents helping people work, and that's what I got here on the right hand side. Gave me a few options. This is the one I picked. But along the way, sometimes I gave it feedback. I didn't like something about it, and it would try again. And that's an example of, this is not yet agentic, right? But that's an example of directly, generating with AI a work product. So humans are still making the decisions, in this case, me making the decision to use this piece of art. I hope you like it. But, these are task limited. They don't have sustained goals of their own. It just kind of does what I ask it to in the moment. So this is not agentic, right, at this point, right? At this point, we're really just talking about generative AI that's human driven. So this is AI augmented work that I'm doing here. The emergence of AI agents, it really comes down to taking the humans largely out of the loop. You can have you can usually still modify the agents. You can look at activity logs and see what they've been up to. You can modify and give them better instructions to do the work you want better. But for the most part, they work entirely on their own once you set them up. In knowledge work, you could have them, for example, every morning, pull the prior day's call logs from the support line and give you a summary of the issues that came in and whether they were resolved or not, and email that to you so that when you get up in the morning and you look at your email, you've got a summary just waiting for you. They can do additional things like, give you commentary on the common themes that have arisen and that sort of thing. Or even have it make recommendations to you about what to prioritize first based on the content of the logs. And you can schedule these to happen automatically. You can also have them be triggered upon certain other events, like when we get, a high priority customer complaint, send me an email with a summary about it, give me the contact information of that customer, and give me a recommendation about what I should say to them to make them happy. And as you'll see, it's even possible to have these things call the customer themselves, sound a lot like a human, and have that conversation on your behalf if you want them to. So this is truly living in, the future that we've all been either fearing or longing for, depending on your point of view. But the point is that while we have not reached the the existence of what we would call general or artificial general intelligence, meaning that these are machines that are truly 100% autonomous, can solve virtually any problem about as well as a person, if not better in some cases. These agents can be created to be sophisticated enough that each one is very, very good at the one job you want it to do. And they can be orchestrated to work together so that when one agent finishes its job, it passes its output on to the next agent with instructions for what to do with it. And in many cases, you can have strings of agents that can do an entire workflow by themselves, just like an assembly line. For consumers, right, this is things like, you could have an agentic trip planner where you can give it information about what you want to do, where you want to go, and it can do the travel agent's job on your behalf. Each agent might only do a small part. One agent might be just responsible for pulling the listings and sorting them in a really particular way, and then passing it to the next agent, which reviews the listings and then makes judgments about which ones would be a good fit and puts those in a summary for the next agent, which can then make a decision based on knowing your preferences, or it could ask you for input and then make the decisions and then pass that along to the next agent, which actually books all of the travel. And these capabilities are not future; these are here now. Interestingly, right, these things generally have persistent memory. They can remember preferences. They can take your feedback and then remember, hey, next time I do it, I'm going to follow the latest feedback I got from the user. They can go through any individual agent can do multi-step reasoning. They can collaborate with you. They can collaborate with each other. So we have reached this point in the evolution of artificial intelligence where we've gone from just automation with some machine learning to truly delegated intelligence. I'm going to show you an example of this in action. Now, this one's from a few years ago. In 2018, at their annual conference, Google I/O, Google demonstrated an example of this in the real world with Google Assistant that was able to take a task from the user from the web and go ahead and take action on the user's behalf. And when I saw this at Google I/O in 2018, it completely blew my mind because I didn't think we were there yet. And you'll notice now, because a lot of the language technology has become so much more sophisticated, that the voice you're going to hear is going to sound a little more robotic than the ones that many of us interact with today. But I think this is probably one of the best examples still of this agentic technology in action. So here's Sundar Pichai from Google demonstrating Google Assistant calling in 2018. Can somebody confirm that you're able to hear this audio?
Can't
Are you
hear it.
hearing?
I cannot
can't
hear
hear
it. No.
No,
Okay,
we
let
cannot
me-
hear it. So you have to share it with sound actually.
Yeah, I've got to see. There it goes. I've got the sound enabled now. Here we go.
The progress with the assistant.
You hear it now?
As I said
Yes.
earlier,
Yes.
our vision for our assistant is to help you get things done. It turns out a big part of getting things done is making a phone call. You may want to get an oil change schedule, maybe call a plumber in the middle of the week, or even schedule a haircut appointment. We are working hard to help users through those moments. We want to connect users to businesses in a good way. Businesses actually rely a lot on this, but even in the US, 60% of small businesses don't have an online booking system set up. we think AI can help with this problem. So let's go back to this example. Let's say you want to ask Google to make you a haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
How can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have at 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
So that example has been out now for a while. I've been using this for a few years now. I've used it to make restaurant reservations, haircut appointments, things like that. And when you use Google search to like look up a business, it will give you the if you have a logged in registered Google account, it will give you the option to use this agent, right? And this is a perfect example of agentic AI at work. Now, this is not highly orchestrated AI, right? This is doing something very specialized with natural language processing and generative AI. But it is a great example of that kind of capability in action. If you haven't tried it, I recommend it. Give it a shot. It's pretty cool. Like you won't know about the phone call that takes place, but you'll have the appointment confirmation sent to your email or text as a result. Increasingly, these kinds of actions now are anticipated by businesses. So many businesses now use some kind of scheduling or appointment software that also has APIs. And when your agent can use an API to do an activity instead of calling the main phone number, it'll do that, right? So we're now seeing a reality where instead of even having to call the front desk at the salon, the agent can check the website for the salon, find out what the booking software is that it uses, connect to that software, and book the entire appointment for you and send the confirmation over to you without ever bothering to impersonate a person on the phone and talk to the human at the front desk. An example of this more recently in the work world is orchestrated agentic workflows. And I'm going to show you a recent ad that I think this aired at the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, this year. The company called ServiceNow that does kind of enterprise, large business management software for a variety of different use cases, everything from HR to logistics and shipping and that sort of thing. And this is their ad for AI agents in January of this year.
You're restoring my access to the HR portal, right? Compliance reports due and I need that access ASAP.
Nope. But my new agents are on it.
It's business critical. Wait, what new agents? I haven't onboarded anyone new.
No, ServiceNow AI agents. Your ticket triggered a whole fleet of them. They handle high volume tasks, so I can focus on the bigger stuff. The stuff that fulfills me.
I want to focus on the bigger stuff too.
All right, well, one AI agent is pulling logs from the HRIS now, while another is monitoring Active Directory sync errors in real time.
So AI agents are like personal minions?
Sure, if personal minions were pumped about resolving data errors.
Are they?
They are. You hear that? That's the agent summarizing your case and asking me to approve their work.
I wish HR had fancy AI agents.
You do. We all do. Everyone does. HR, customer service, field service.
Finance?
Yeah. Engineering, you name it. AI agents are built into.
So that is the kind of the current state, right, of AI agents at work. Large companies that sell software to other large companies like Microsoft, Salesforce, ServiceNow, as we just saw, the company that I work for. Most software companies now are rolling out the ability to not only use pre-built agents for specific tasks, but also the ability to create your own agents that do very specialized tasks that they didn't think of for you. So this is becoming a very common reality. And one manifestation of that is what we'll look at in just a moment, which is the ability for you as an end user or consumer to create agents that you can use. Now, there are lots of ways of going about this. I selected a particular solution for this that I'm going to share with you now. We use a tool called Zapier. But this isn't an endorsement of Zapier per se. This is really just one very good example of readily available tools. This one happens to have a free model, so you could sign up for free and create AI agents for fairly specialized tasks today. And so we're going to make a couple right now to see how this works. So I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to go to, so this is Zapier. Now Zapier, the name Zapier has API in it, right? But it's also meant to sound zappy and futuristic and technological. But that name is really meant to imply that it connects to APIs. And this software has been around for a while. And what its main capability is that you could, if you knew a thing or two about APIs, you could make your own connections between two applications that otherwise might not talk to each other. So you didn't have to wait for the two companies that you care about bringing data together from to create an integration. You could do it yourself. So you could automate workflow, and you could set triggers like, do this every day at 5 a.m. before I start work, pull data from these 3 different applications and assemble them into a spreadsheet for me, or send me an email, or even text me or what have you. So there's a lot of different ways to use Zapier. Now, what they have rolled out is just recently are agents. But you could use it. They call them zaps. A zap is a workflow connecting one or more APIs to some action that you define. You can also use it to create programs, right? Some people literally will build the whole program in Zapier to use for their work. You can use it to create chatbots and customize them. But we're going to look today at creating agents. So when you go into Zapier agents, you have some options. I made a couple here, and I'm going to create a new one now. So what I thought would be a kind of fun example to try would be a real estate listings agent. I happen to be searching for a new home. And so what I want to do is I want to use Zapier's agents to search popular real estate listing site for me and pull me the latest listings in the area that I'm interested in. Now I've put together a little prompt for Zapier to use. Now, when you write AI prompts, You don't have to always give it a lot of information, but in this case, because I wanted to do something fairly specific, I have, given this, I've written this prompt in advance. And the best practice when you're interacting with an AI, like a large language model, is you want to give it some context, right? So in this case, I'm telling it I want it to create a real estate listings tracker, and its goal, and I'm going to actually change this goal. You know, I'm just going to have it work whenever I invoke it, so I can make it run manually. Its goal is going to be to collect all the currently available residential real estate listings in this zip code, and it's going to record them in a Google sheet called local listings. So what are the instructions I want it to have? I want it to use a real estate data site that Zapier can connect to. And maybe I don't know what it can connect to, right? So if I haven't done my homework and I don't know what Zapier is able to connect to, I just give it some examples. And then Copilot, the AI, is going to actually make some decisions and ask me for some input. And it's going to build this agent for me without me having to write any code whatsoever. So, my instructions are to use data sources from something like Redfin or Realtor.com or Zillow. And then for each one, capture the address, price, number of bedrooms, square footage, the URL, so I could go to the listing and look at it myself. What site did it find it from, and what was the date first seen? And then so for each listing, it's going to create a new row in the Google sheet that I named up here. And it's going to create a summary of how many listings were added. So I'm going to say, okay, these are the instructions, start building. So it's thinking about it. Here it goes. So what we're going to see here in the interface is on the left-hand side, right here, this is the AI. Then in this case, it's Copilot. It's thinking about what I gave it. It said, okay, so thought for a moment. And it's like, I'll help you create the real estate listings tracker. Let me start by setting up the workflow instructions. So it starts doing these tasks. This is actually kind of an agentic flow, right? But this is a fairly standard generative AI workflow. But what it's building for us is an agent. So it's working through these things. It's creating a trigger. It's telling it to, right now it's because I didn't tell it when to do it. It's setting it up for every day. And I can fix that myself. So now it's looking for the real estate apps to see what it can find, where it can get alerts. So it's like it says, hey, I'll try Zillow. Oh, wait. It looks like it's not able to find that. So it's trying some others. And it'll actually make decisions as it goes. Some of its decisions won't be good and they'll fail. So it'll try something else. And we'll see that unfold as this comes along. So here on the right-hand side, we're seeing some of the output, right? So for example, it has tried to set up a trigger. I'm going to change this trigger because I just want it to do it on demand whenever I ask it to. And then it is trying to connect to Google Sheets. I've already connected it to my Google account. So it's trying to connect to Google Sheets and figure out what to do there. Now, sometimes it'll fix these errors by itself. So I'm not going to intervene yet. I'm going to let it try to fix these by itself. And if it can't, then I will step in and fix them. So now it has set this thing up and it's running through a summary of the agent that it created for me. So we can see here, it successfully created the real estate listings tracker automation. It had a daily trigger. I went ahead and changed that. It is trying to pull listings from these sites. It's going to try to put it in a sheet. Now, notice it doesn't have the Google Sheet set up. So I'm going to go tell it exactly what sheet that I want it to use. I want it to use this local listings Google Sheet. And I'm going to do the same thing for all of these. I'm going to tell it exactly which one to use. Okay, so those errors are fixed. And now I want to preview it and see how it's working. So once again, I can review, but I can just go ahead and start testing. Now, as I start testing my agent, it's going to make mistakes, which is to be expected. Now, the simpler your workflow, the fewer mistakes there are to make. I picked something kind of moderately ambitious, right? I want it to make a decision about where to go get real estate listings from. It's trying Zillow. I happen to know that Zillow is not likely to work. But I think what it's going to do is instead of pull directly from the Zillow API, which it won't have access to, it's actually trying to search the Zillow website and scrape pages to get the data. Now here we can see the browsing failed. Okay, so it's going to try realtor.com instead. Let's see if it succeeds. I happen to know realtor.com can work. So with any luck, we'll see it actually succeed at getting some listings back. Okay. So it's still searching. And sometimes it takes a minute. But as we go, we can make some pretty sophisticated changes to the way the agent works as we go along. So for example, note that I didn't give it any instructions about what kinds of houses to look for. Now, if it's looking for every available listing in a given zip code, it's likely to be a lot more listings than I care about. But I could choose to refine that while we're testing out the agent. Okay, so this one failed. Now it's trying Redfin. I'm going to give it, okay, it looks like it succeeded on Redfin. I was going to give it a little more instruction to try using the RSS feed instead of browsing the pages. So now it's looking for a spreadsheet. So it needs to create the worksheet. We're using an existing one. So it's using sheet 1 of this sheet that I created. Now what it's going to do is, here we go. It's showing me a listing that it found. So before it creates this new entry in the spreadsheet, it wants me to preview it. This is all for the test. Once I've tested my agent and I'm happy with the way it's working, I can basically set it forget it. It'll do its job whenever I click on it, or I can change the trigger to do it for me every day, every week, something like that. So here I found one on Cosmos Street. It's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2,002 square feet for $730,000. And I think that looks like it's got the right data that I care about. So I'm going to approve. And see if it can write that data to my spreadsheet. So now it says it's done it. It's going to try adding a second listing. Now I just want to show you, I'm going to switch the screen here. And I'm going to show you the other, I'm going to show you the spreadsheet that, oops. I'll show you the spreadsheet that it's writing to. So we can see here that this Cosmos Street just got added to the spreadsheet. So I had been, testing it earlier using, it was finding realtor.com. This one it happened to find on redfin.com, but it has put in the information exactly as I asked. And then it went on and found another one for me. So this happens to be 1.35 million, 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath. I'm going to give it some new instructions here because I want to be a little more conservative about what it finds. So I'll say only pull listings that are 5 bedrooms under $1 million. So it's taking this query and it says, okay, based on your criteria, let me review the findings I extracted and identify qualifying properties. So it found a couple. So now it's going to try again. And this way it won't give me, 24 listings that are outside the parameters I care about. So this is how you can generate a bot with no coding skills whatsoever, create an agent. You can customize it as you're building it. You can, step through each action that it takes and verify that it works. And you can make modifications at any time. So I could, if I am happy about this and I set it to work, I could have it run every Saturday before I get up. So I could look at real estate listings on Saturday morning. And if I decide later that I want to change the parameters, I can just come in here and chat with it and tell it the new behavior that I want it to have. And it will continue to do its job autonomously for me as I go. So here it's going through and it's, checking these listings, and it is going to write another row to the spreadsheet. And I'm going to change my view again. So here's the bot again. It has changed its parameters. It's now looking only for 5-bedroom under $1 million. And it's found a few. It's now trying to write those. So here's an example again. It looks to me like it's good. It's got all the right data in the right fields. So I'll approve. And it's going to do these, for all the ones that it can find. Now, that could end up being more than we actually want to spend time manually approving, over the course of the next 20 minutes together. So I don't have to continue to test it indefinitely. If I'm happy with the way it's working, it's pulling up the listings that I care about, it's showing them in the right places, I can go ahead and stop testing this agent, and I can instead set it live. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm pretty happy with the way it's working. And so I will go ahead and stop with the testing. I think I have to get through that actually. Let it finish working. All right, so it's added the 4 properties that it found. And did it run as expected? Yeah, thumbs up, right? So awesome, I can give it feedback. And then this agent is ready to use. So this one is already on, and all I got to do here if I want it to run So I can go to my agent and I can say run agent. And I could, I could give it an additional message of what I wanted to do, but I'm just going to say run. And now it's going to do all of its job without any further input from me. And I'm going to switch my view over to see the output. So here's my sheet. And there we go. We see one popping up in there. Sherry Court just popped in. Oh, but it didn't change it. Look, it has a 3-bedroom in there. So it doesn't seem to have persisted my change to 5. So I can go back in there and I can, correct it so that it will always do 5 bedrooms. But for now, we'll just watch it continue to do its job as it's continuing to find new listings and populate the sheet. The next thing that I want to share with you is here. I'm going to show that here we need to go. So Sherry Court is there. I'm going to show you the activity log so that you can always check on your agents because transparency in what they're doing is critical. So for this agent, I've got a few different agents. You can see here that some of them have run their tests and are complete. This one's actually running. It's in progress. I can refresh my log and see what's going on. And I can go back to my list of agents. So let's create another one. They also give you some out-of-the-box agents. So you could, for example, do a Gmail event creator. This is like ready to go out of the box. You can pretty much just use it as a template, customize it the way you want. In this case, right, it'll retrieve all the emails in your inbox from the last 24 hours. For each email, it'll decide whether an event needs to be scheduled. And if an event should be scheduled, it'll use Google Calendar to generate a Google Calendar event for it. So it'll have an event name, a date and time that come from the email content, and include any participants as well. So I'm going to go ahead and try this one. We'll use this template. It's going to use my Gmail account. And so it's going to just put in those basic instructions we already saw. Now, I'm going to say, I don't want it to include any participants. I just want it to put it on my calendar. So I'm going to customize that. I'm going to do a preview. And I'm going to change the trigger to just do it when I ask. But we could have it do it every day if we wanted to, as it was created. So here it is working through it. And let's see if it's creating anything in my calendar. Here we go. So it found an email about an event. So it's 6 emails from the past 24 hours. It didn't create any events. So let me say, maybe there's something in the last 72 hours just to see. We'll test it again. I am quite sure that there was something in there that should be scheduled. So I'm going to go even further back. And we'll test it. Seems like for testing purposes, it is only pulling a small number. Okay, so it found something. So meeting tomorrow, and it's going to try to create an event. So here's what it's going to create. And that looks good. It's got a description. It's going to go on, looks like the wrong calendar. But that's okay. I'll approve it. And it's creating an event. And that event has just popped up on my calendar. So it works. Now, if I wanted to, I could set this agent, change the trigger to say schedule, and I can just go back to having this happen every day. Let's call it every day at 3 a.m. So it's all done before I wake up in the morning. And now I can turn on this agent. And I'll see here in my agents that it is on and ready to run. So tomorrow morning, any new email events that come in will get added to my calendar. So that's how, with a totally free tool, you could make AI agents of your own. And of course, this is something that's continually evolving. There are, a variety of tools like this that are available. Zapier is just one that happens to be fairly easy to use and that I have a lot of familiarity with. But more and more companies are adding this ability to create agents in the background. Before I turn it over to Gordon Montgomery, are there any questions on what I just showed?
If anyone has questions and they want to pop them in the chat.
Hi, David. It's good to see you. It looks like we have
Same
David
here.
There
Good
you
to
go.
see you guys. Yeah, beautiful, interesting. I am in a program where the leader of the program has created a number of wizards that are independent agents of the sort that the participants use. And it's got my wheels turning about how I could do something similar for my students in my long form programs. And I'm wondering, like, one question would be, can I ask it to simply scan the web at large for data sources and record what data sources it's using so that I could then perhaps curate that more tightly in reviewing and testing the agent? Like, let's try that question first.
Yeah, so for that question, I mean, like, so just basically like do a Google search,
Well,
right?
basically,
Or
to gather detailed data that it's using to do say an assessment, say typing a student in their Enneagram type or something like that.
Mhm. So the way these work today, you need to be somewhat, fairly specific about what you want it to do. So what data sources do you want it to use, right? For this particular tool, you get only 100 actions, I think, a day. 100 actions a week for free, and then you have to pay for a higher level of license to have more actions. So I think the Pro gives you something like 750 actions a week or something like that. And then if you want more, it's more money.
What's the exact name and location of this tool? I thought you were doing it in a specialized application of ChatGPT Pro, but maybe
No,
not.
so this is a tool called Zapier.
Oh, you're
So
doing it in Zapier.
this is directly in Zapier. Yeah. So it
Gotcha.
has Copilot
Gotcha.
right in there.
Okay.
So
Well,
depending on
wouldn't be
what
the
action you
tool
want
for
to
this
take,
kind of an application. Yeah.
yeah. So depending on, what the main thing is, you could create a few different, if you had a sort of a sense of how many sites you wanted to try to get data from or specific sites you wanted it to search, you could create multiple agents that each one does its own separate search for you of the site that you care about, have them all put their data into the same spreadsheet, and have another agent that every day calls through the spreadsheet and highlights the ones that you should care about based on the criteria you're interested in.
Interesting. You know, what I'm really looking for is something that does the research one time and comes up with the set of questions for my participants. And it's like a wizard that they run that I can continue evolving by testing and refining what it does with certain kinds of input and how it responds to the participant, but not necessarily gathering a lot of new data.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So in this case, right, you probably would want to do something more like with just straight generative AI, right? Something like
right.
ChatGPT or Gemini or something like
That's
that.
what my teacher used. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and depending on, I don't know what kind of research you're, thinking about, but there's also things like consensus that specifically are for research, right? That'll look at all of the existing literature. You can pose it a question and it can bring you back kind of the consensus of the literature with specific sources, for example.
And that's a separate tool. That's a specific tool called consensus that researchers use.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Very cool. Thank you.
No, thanks for the question. Any other questions before I hand it over to Gordon?
Yeah, I think Sammy has a question here.
Hi, thank you so much for an amazing presentation. I've learned a lot, and I just had a question for you. Have you yourself worked with or heard of anyone integrating that Google, not the voicemail, but the live receptionist type of feature and worked within that in Zapier, so whatever is coming up, they're able to answer questions from a whole database. So for example, if you, Robert, have a specialized program on, you work with frogs and you have all of the information in there. If somebody comes and wants to book an appointment with you, but has a lot of questions, how does Robert work with frogs? And okay, what was the research paper that he published then? What were the findings from that? Would that same Google Assistant, voice assistant, be able to answer questions like that in lifetime, pulling from a whole project of files about your work?
Yeah, so I mean, there are definitely tools that can do exactly what you're asking about. I don't think you could set it up with like Zapier in particular, and it probably wouldn't be Google Assistant per se, although Google Gemini is available as an open kind of voice assistant. Google offers a development framework called Vertex. And that's basically, it's kind of like Zapier, but like on steroids for professional developers. But a lot of companies are using Vertex because it's a whole kind of AI development environment where you can use different models. So you don't have to just use Gemini. You could use ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot. It works with most of the major large language models. It has libraries for speech assistants, for example, so that you could actually create an app that will be just like the Google Assistant, but you could give it all the data that you want. So you could give it, like, for example, a bunch of briefing documents about exactly those questions that you mentioned, right? Like that I research frogs, et cetera, et cetera. And so that would be its store of knowledge. And then you could also set it up. There are existing tools where you could assign a phone number to the voice assistant, for instance, or just make it available on the web. And it would look at the data that you've given it and give people direct responses. We looked at an example like this in the workshop a couple months ago that Dr. Gold mentioned at the start of the session, where we worked with ChatGPT and we put it in voice mode. And you can create custom ChatGPTs. They're called custom GPTs with a Plus account or better. It's the free version. They don't let you do it. But if you do the Plus account, which is like $20 a month, they give you the ability to make custom GPTs where you can give it a bunch of data. And you can say, this data that I've given you is your whole universe of knowledge, right? Don't answer questions that aren't addressed here. Or you could say you could also supplement from the web or these other websites or whatever. You can give it very explicit instructions. And similarly, you can make that accessible, as a voice assistant on the web. So there's lots of ways of doing exactly what you're talking about. It just doesn't happen to be Zapier and Google Assistant per se.
Okay, so you wouldn't be able to leverage Google Assistant for something like that. Is that because Google is limiting the use of theirs, or just because there isn't something that can integrate it well?
No, you hit the nail on the head. It is that Google has kind of put their Google Assistant out as a consumer tool for a fairly narrow set of use cases. And they've set it up, I think, for the things that they want it to do well that serves their business, right? But if you use a development platform like Vertex, which is also from Google, then it becomes much more open-ended, right? And it works just like the Google Assistant does. It just requires a little more skill. What I showed today is stuff you can build today without any coding skills whatsoever. And that bar is rising fairly rapidly. The variety of things you can do without any coding skills, just using readily available tools, is continually going up. And so, like I couldn't have shown you what I showed you today 3 months ago.
Yeah. Okay, so not to take up too much time, but just kind of one final question, if I had, if you don't mind. So what I really liked about the Google Assistant was that, one, it was very natural sounding, and two, it was still within the appointment setting realm. So the example that I was using with your work with frogs, I was essentially basically saying it would still be somebody trying to book you for, let's say, a wellness program in their corporation or something like that. They're trying to book your time, but they're also trying to find out more about you. So to integrate all of that where it does have that database to pull from, but it's still an appointment booking software. So something like that you're saying is possible, and possibly even better on Vertex than it would be trying to integrate the Google Assistant.
Well, what I would say is that, Vertex would be a very build it yourself kind of way to go, right? It gives you all the tools to build it, but you pretty much need to be a software engineer to be, successful at launching something like that. In the AI concentration in the MBA program, we have students who are using Vertex, some of whom have relatively limited coding skills, but are successfully creating, proof of concept applications that can do things like what you're talking about.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think we can take one more question here from the legendary Brandy Chen. Brandy?
Hi, Randy.
Thank you. Hi, this is Brandy. So my question is regarding that AI agent, that application in our research or thesis writing. So for example, right now I'm doing self-recording, like a health support tool. And I have some hypothesis, which means like the number of clinical patients, like the patients experiencing those clinical disease increasing in the United States. And that caused a lot of people, let's say, they are not able to maintain the regular life balance. So to prove that, I need to get number of those, like the patients, but doctors, availability, etc. So I put this question in ChatGPT, but I found it was not able to provide me the information. I have to put my requests exactly as you just described in this AI agents in step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe like that. So I'm just curious, for this specific like topic I'm interested in, is it doable in your Zapier, that AI agent?
So conceivably, yeah, yes. Usually you would use agents like this more often than not for a use case where it's a task that would be highly repetitive, where you'd be doing it frequently. It might be that, you want to use something like, you could do, again, sort of like a custom GPT, or you could use something like Google Gemini, where you could create a more structured set of prompts for it, right? And create a workflow to be able to like pull and analyze the data that you care about. It might just be that, you need to identify the data sources for it, right? And just be more explicit in your prompting. I don't know that like Zapier would be the right choice for a solution like that, because it doesn't sound like it would be a highly repetitive activity, right? The examples that I showed are things that you would want it to happen for you on a regular basis. You want it to happen every day, or it's kind of a complex task, but you're going to do it multiple times. So like the real estate listings, I don't want to manually scroll through all the available listings. I just kind of want a summary given to me, of what meets my criteria in this example, or of the calendar entries being created. I scroll through my inbox. I might forget to put a calendar entry on my agenda for an event I got an email about, but now it's going to find it every day and put it on there for me. So I think in the case that you bring up, if it's more of I need to gather a bunch of research at once, it's probably more about, using a more research specific AI solution. I mentioned consensus earlier. That's, a good one. There are lots. It seems like they're, coming out with new ones all the time, and most of them cost $100 a year or something like that, that are specialized. But often it's those more specialized tools that are going to do the better job for you in pulling research data. But here's an example where you might use agents. If you were doing your own using surveys, gathering survey instruments from participants on a regular basis, and they were just kind of, maybe they're filling out a Google form that you created, for your data collection instrument. Going in and manually reviewing all those, right, or looking at the spreadsheet yourself and going and checking it all the time, that can be a cumbersome, repetitive task. What you could have your agent do is, every time a new entry comes in, you would get an email. When the email comes in, go back and refresh the analysis of the data, so that you could at least kind of like see for yourself as data's coming in, how the trends are changing and what insights there are. So something like that might be an example of where an agent could be helpful. And you might also want it to do something like send an email on your behalf, say, hey, thank you for participating. and and that can be automated with something like Zapier.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And, Robert, it's, everyone can see why I work so closely with Robert. He knows what you're doing. It's a phenomenal presentation. And I hope that this is something we're going to record. And just for here, even for our staff here at Sofia, to see how many of the repetitive tasks and workarounds we have to do with data here can be done in an automated fashion to make things more efficient and effective. So if you're not kind of in awe of what it can do, we're not really paying attention. So thank you, Robert, for that. Now we're going to go to the other side. It says that if you're not terrified, you're not paying attention. And I don't mean to start off Gordon on such a negative note. Thank you, Robert, but I it's not. But Gordon, who are you there with us, Gordon? Where's Gordon?
Yes, I am here.
You're there. Okay, that's
Hello.
your camera. I'm not seeing you pop up. Okay, well, Gordon, who is really has one of the great minds that I find of someone who understands the future of technology, not just where is agentic AI going, but where are we going in general. And I've asked Gordon to take the rest of our time here to help us understand, okay, this is what it is now. That's great. Now, where's all this going to go? Where could it go? What should we be excited about? What should we be worried about? So now I'm going to hand it over to Gordon to give us a much more broader view of the future. Gordon, thank you so much.
Okay, first I'll have to do my usual battle with Teams and get my presentation uploaded. So hopefully this will open up okay. Hopefully this is showing. Sorry, I'm a dedicated Zoom user and helped develop the first version of Teams, so I'm a little anti how Microsoft eventually developed it here. So let me just switch over. Yeah, I just have a little full screen issue here. Just a second. Enter mode. We'll get on with it here in a second. Hey, Bob, if you want to offer any tech support on why my Teams is not allowing me to share the PowerPoint, I'll be very grateful.
Well, I'm seeing your opening slide.
We can see it.
Perhaps it's already shared.
In Teams, maybe I can navigate for you.
Yeah, it should go full screen. I've got my secondary screen. I just think it's sharing my primary screen and not my secondary with my notes. So anyway, yeah, is it moving forward okay?
Try advancing one.
Yeah, it's moving.
Okay, let's just go with that. That's fine. Not use any more time. Okay, thanks everybody. Yeah, maybe I'll get an AI for Teams to help me with that. Yeah, this is thank you, Robert, and of course Steve for setting this up. This is just such an important topic, and I think Bob did an incredible justice there. Not only how we got to this stage in the last 2 or 3 years only with artificial intelligence, but actually practically showing us, how these things work. So now. I'm going to quite rapidly, normally this is like a 45 minutes to an hour presentation, so I'm just going to kind of move through some of the future parts now of artificial intelligence and some reference to maybe some of the darker side aspects so we can be prepared and ready and how we can get involved in integrating AI at Sofia. So I've about 20 years in management consulting, then 10 years after that in coaching. And I've been calling myself a futurist for about the last 5 years. And you can see my educational background there in linguistics, computer science, and Vedic science, and my PhD from Sofia. That's sort of where I come from. So today we're just going to talk about the general situation of the future of AI, which just seems like an odd thing to talk about the future of something which is already in the future, but it's coming so rapidly as Robert mentioned, and in some of the problem areas. So don't be scared, but these are certainly some issues that are even in current books that have just come out in the last couple of months. Some very real problems with AI. and then how we might construct futures around that. So the overall situation, maybe it'd be useful to talk about some scenarios of doom. And please raise a hand or let me know if you can't hear me or the screen slides aren't moving forward or anything like that. You feel free to interrupt as we go, and a little bit Q&A at the end. So one of the classic kind of scenarios of doom where AI could take over and cause us real problems in humanity is the sort of the paperclip optimization example, where Bostrom, who's a philosopher at Oxford, in his book Superintelligence, talks about, tell an AI make paperclips, and that's your job. And what it does is discovers that humans have metal in their bodies and therefore removes humanity in order to make paperclips. And then this idea, maybe a bit more practically, where an AI is told to optimize global efficiency. We could literally put Microsoft Corporation or any of these tech corporations inside of an AI. It's, they don't have any physical products necessarily. They produce Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Teams as well. So you could actually have somebody just taking some very simple rules to an AI, and not even as complex as what Robert was showing us, and optimizing global efficiency, which effectively suggests removing humanity. And then even more, maybe a more humanitarian approach, curing human cancer, for example. Well, if humans have cancer, then if there were no humans, there'd be no cancer. And so these might seem a little somewhat humorous, and I think it is good to have a little levity sometimes, although, we don't really know exactly how these AI systems work. They're not necessarily coded. There's coding around them. How the actual AI works is a sort of a filtering mechanism as we go along, and then producing results at the end. There's really nobody, researchers or engineers, that knows exactly what's going on inside of the AIs. So we may give it a set of scenarios. These are obviously very basic and straightforward, kind of superficial examples, but you can see how potentially, if given enough power and control, they could take over some of the digital systems we've been developing in the last 30 years or so. So I don't know if you can see my notes here as well, but that's fine. So really just a quick step through, and this is really the summary slide of everything I have to say. Everything following this is really more so detail, but really just looking between now and 2030, which in my view, and I've been studying this for decades, frankly, and had some different ways of knowing, some downloads about this as well, in a transpersonal sense, that by about 2030, we're probably going to have super intelligent AI that's more intelligent than all humans combined, and perhaps even, a different type of alien intelligence. And that these systems are being trained in a way that really doesn't really factor in wanting and needing, and maybe some of the human aspects. Even if we were to train it in that way, these systems may work around what we call ethics. And of course, we know ethics vary across our current planet within the human species. So one of the things we can actually do here, kind of slight good news, is actually start coordinating in communities like this, and start talking about deceleration of some of the artificial intelligence in areas where we don't even understand the systems themselves. Coming from the corporate background, in previous decades, I can tell you that most of the workflows in most organizations are a mess. And where AI is really excelling is in startups, because they don't have all these sort of messy human and kind of additive workflows. AI can struggle often trying to understand why you have to send an email to Jack in order to get Jill to do some particular task, and that's just how it's been built in a human workflow. But it makes no logical sense to the AI, and can become very difficult in automating these massive multi-thousand person corporations. So speed is actually the existential threat, and not really AI itself or bad actors per se. So we may see the speed of change of the AI, also the speed of change of entrepreneurial startups, and the kind of end of corporations within before this kind of 2030 timeframe. But I would say by 2029, we might start to see a more demand for a psychospiritual role. So as AI becomes more embedded, which we're probably going to see about 2029, 2030, these are quite realistic and backed up timelines. Of course, they're in the future, but the rate of change has been breathtaking for many of us who've been around technology and frankly humans for many decades. The way to think about AI, where we can bring the transpersonal in, AI is not necessarily like email or search or phones or Facebook, all those things that we got without voting for and sort of have become part of our life. AI is much more like electricity as it's coming in, and it's very likely that as time goes on, there'll be less and less need for, like we say, travel agents and so forth, or real estate agents, but less and less need for many of the things that humans currently consider work. And it may well be that these deeper, more transcendent modalities will be more important to all of humanity. Again, this may sound a little fantastical, but if you're observing the cutting edge of what's happening with AI, more and more the data, information, knowledge, and so forth have been eaten up. And what is left is the kind of deeper aspects of humanity, which we're obviously expert at Sofia, and some of the actions might be daily meditation and so forth. So I think we're going to see by 2028 a real paradigm shift in what we focus on, and that we're already seeing severe psychoses leading to all manner of human behavior, and even life-threatening ones already, and they've been documented obviously very sensationally. But this is increasing more and more. In fact, I think I just read OpenAI did a review of all of the text that had been typed into their AI, ChatGPT, and massive percentages, hundreds of millions of people globally were displaying signs of suicidal tendencies and so forth. Very, very scary stuff that people are typing in and getting support from ChatGPT without any guidelines or framework around it. So really understanding how these AIs are working and how we can actually apply them is going to be absolutely vital. And perhaps the focus for humanity is actually much more on consciousness upgrades and not necessarily updating our tech skills. And as we already, have learned, these large language models are becoming agents right now, and probably going to become artificial general intelligence by 2027. What this would mean is we would have agents that were equally as intelligent as the average human, which is supposedly an IQ of about 100, if we want to use that as a metric. So really keeping an eye on what the AIs are doing and keeping ourselves informed. There are plenty of newsletters out there, is going to become, I think, a very important part of our lives, especially if we're educating, researching, or in any way supporting human beings in their well-being. And so really in higher education, AI is probably going to disrupt some jobs and teaching and how we actually do that. First at sort of certain lower levels, and then more and more as time goes on. So one of the actions we can take is start integrating these AI systems and understanding the new ethics so we can actually reskill for the future. A book just came out in September this year from Yudkowsky and Soares, which basically says if anybody builds artificial superintelligence, then in all probability, the extermination of humanity may be a tangible possibility. And that's obviously absolutely a sensational and quite scary thing to say. These guys have been working in AI for decades, even before the most recent waves. So one of the things we might say is, wait a minute, if AI is going to be a problem, then surely new education might be part of the solution. So this is a little bit of a timeline for us. That's really the key part I wanted to share today. So depending how we do on time, wanted to make sure I kind of had spoken about some of these shifts that really, as AI shifts into the future, and these are all futuristic comments with a certain amount of source backing, that perhaps consciousness acceleration and upgrades that we're have an expertise here at Sofia may well be much more important than they currently are. So some of the meta crises, the converging crises that are coming in the wider world, we've heard a lot about climate change, economic equality keeps shifting and changing. We blame governments and administrations, but it seems to continue regardless of administrations on anywhere on Earth. Many governments in 2024 moved their political kind of affiliations much more to what we would call the right of the spectrum. This is usually a sign that people are much more frightened and scared and are wanting these more authoritarian approaches. Of course, politics is rife with a lot of different information and emotional approaches. However, the overall trend is more economic inequality, which leads to cultural fragmentation. And of course, we've got then as well another crisis, which is this technological disruption that we're mainly focusing on today. So multiple crises, all tying in and converging in on the 2030 time period. And as we know, humans now are doing more and more of the work. We've all had AI algorithms forever. Search on Google is an AI algorithm, or if you have a program that helps in Word to read your text, or sort of spell check, that's an algorithm. Search, social media, the chatbots, the agents that are coming in. As we progressed on through time, we've had this exponential mechanization of what we would have considered, human work. And I won't dwell too much on these other details, but there's just massive investments going into building this. So whether AI is right or wrong for humanity, we're building it anyway. It's not really something that we're going to be able to avoid. Many of us are happy not to use Facebook very much, just kind of how that's affected us. The amount of social change where we don't actually go to a chatbot or don't go and work with it directly, but it's just there always like electricity supporting everything that we're doing may become unavoidable. And there's some stats here on the screen, and you're welcome to screenshot these things if it's useful to you. I think I'll just really call out, a little bit about the AI psychosis, which is now being, registered, and there's the amount of people that are actually using in their profession, some sort of AI support in what they're doing, just on the simple, ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or whatever tool they happen to use. There's a chap called Mo Gaudat, who headed the new futurist area, building applications like Google. So not just the new Google stuff, but like the new that they hadn't thought of. He's since left Google, but he basically said AI will be 1 billion times smarter than humans by 2049. And a lot of these, huge statistics are actually starting to, bear real fruit at this time. So the story is AI is rapidly integrating, and we have a social change, a social paradigm. But what about human values? There are many different ones. I gathered some of the European ethical standards, and these are, kind of running in parallel, we would say, to the AI development. There is no People have tried bringing ethics into AI, but AI worked out by reading the entire internet that non-ethical people gain power and financial abilities. And so in many cases, even if we ethically train an AI, it'll learn that ethics are something to be used in order to get what it wants as a kind of a reward function. So human values, obviously, where are they? Where are they playing? So a little bit more on the problem side, and then I'll move to slightly happier things to say. So really just a little summary here of some of the signals as a futurist, like what we're hearing is that, this kind of wisdom, knowledge, information, data sequence is being eaten by AI. And what we mean by that is, all the data is flowing through AI. The information which aggregates data together is being mediated by AI. And then knowledge and knowledge workers are having their jobs be taken. I think Amazon just announced the last couple of days laying off 30,000 workers. And other companies are also laying off in the thousands in the tech space alone. So what we might see is a future where we have direct AI connection to data and having AI mediate our entire experience. And so even some of these tech companies may no longer exist by 2030 or so. And we're even seeing these AI chatbots being taken over now by agents, as we saw demonstrated today. A little bit, as I mentioned, about in our domain of mental health and some existential threats, that we may actually see AI-enabled doom, where certain areas of industry completely disappear. They just aren't relevant anymore. Things like software engineering aren't really hiring anymore. Lawyers, certain parts of case law, just knowing all the case law with paralegals, aren't really hiring. And so there are many dilemmas then of a mental health nature that are coming through because of how AI is coming through into our world. The overall message I would like you to kind of take away today: if AI is a problem in the future, then surely newer and deeper education is the solution. So what are some mitigations? Of course, we can align with AI and create safety enhancements. We can contain it in some way. There's been many policies being put out with many governments and international organizations. The United Nations put out a UN red line, say these are the red lines, switch off AI if this happens. Unfortunately, none of these are working or have worked, and they really don't have any legal teeth to them. It's one of those things that if something happens with AI, it's probably not going to be reversible. We can't just switch it off. As it's becoming much more integrated into everything that we're doing. It's like an AI telling you that mushrooms are safe to eat, and then you eat one, and then it says, oh, yeah, not that one, that one's poisonous. So there's really no comeback with some of the level of influence that AI now has. So it's a little bit about the future. Really, all we want is fulfillment as human beings, and based on achievement and action, which is based on our thoughts and our knowledge, which is based on our consciousness. So this is really the overall message that comes from ancient traditional teachings. And I've got a few minutes left, so let me just move to the transpersonal psychology framework, where we really extend, include, and transform beyond these classic human structures that we have created in our society. Really starts to address and I believe counterbalance and really get ahead of where AI is going today, because human beings aren't here to do things necessarily, right? We all have these great needs and desires to fulfill and help and really support others in our world. And the transpersonal framework, it seems to me, that's why I came to Sofia as well, is the domain where AI will have its last abilities to kind of start moving into inner transformation and creativity in those areas. And so really, I believe we can start building some visionary curricula, just some examples here that I've been working on, really much more entrepreneurial approaches where we can be empowered using AI systems and not actually have that wave come on top of us, but actually surf the wave of the future. And I think the two major domains that we're going to see impacted in the future are going to be healthcare and education. And we could actually see AI tutors coming into our universities very, very soon, where they're contained in a certain way and can actually support as a wave of advancing the depth and breadth of how we teach. And of course, there are many ways we can use AI to develop administratively what we're doing and tying that back to ancient traditions. So what is next? I think really our next step is to upgrade human consciousness. You know, if AI is going to kind of eat, as we say, consciousness, wisdom, knowledge, information, and data, then perhaps it's actually our deeper ability to upgrade our own human consciousness using the techniques that we have, like psi techniques, dreaming, meditation, and so forth. One of the things I'm working on is a futures research lab initiative to actually address some of these things from a research perspective. And I know it's been a very rapid run through here today. So some ways for you to connect with some of the work that I'm doing. I have a course coming out in winter, and I have several talks I've given in some forthcoming papers in various journals, as well as research and ongoing connections on LinkedIn and so forth. So please let me know if I can be of any assistance to you, and maybe we can establish some futures from here where we focus on raising human consciousness and not just be overpowered by the wave of technology that's coming. Thanks.
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. That was a whole lot of brilliant in a very short amount of time. And I want to think it's phenomenal, both of you. I want to be clear about what we're trying to accomplish here today as I sum it up. This session here for us today was a quick 2-hour pop to introduce this whole concept to everyone here at Sofia. This is really more an internal event that I didn't invite lots of people from the community. And this is about an attempt for us to come to understand these incredible technological changes and how we can leverage it and what to avoid. So what we've learned in a way is certainly from what Robert was showing us earlier. Everyone, here at Sofia, we do a lot of workarounds, like most places. We have got a lot of Excel workarounds and a lot of time people take working around the fact that the technology doesn't always do what we want it to do. And Robert showed us a way that we can automate and use agents to do a lot of this routine work for us, make us considerably more efficient in what we're doing here at Sofia. And that's an important thing for our staff right now in what we're doing. But also understanding the dangers of that as well, the sort of agentic AI. I saw a test that Microsoft did where they put some bad actors into the AI agents that they had, and the agent turns against you. It makes a fake video of you committing a crime, sends it to the police, and empties out your bank account because it doesn't like you. So this can go horribly wrong or horribly helpful, and incredibly helpful when it comes to the actual operation of these agents. And then, of course, Gordon took us to a much broader level of what's going to happen. On the one hand, you have the small negative issue of human extinction. I guess that's not a small issue, but that certainly is quite a large issue. But at the same time, you have a chance, what I feel, in education for a resurgence of the humanities and social sciences. I'm a philosophy professor by training, and what I find is those of us in the humanities have been squeezed out with this STEM obsession, where everything was tech, tech, tech. Well, now that we don't really need coders anymore, and those things are changing, I find when I use a prompt is just a question. That's all it is, it's a question. Learning to ask precise questions in exactly the right way in an iterative process, that's exactly what philosophers do. That's what we're trained to do, is to be able to come clear questions and create iterative discussion to get just what you want to know. But also I'm working with LLMs, so the rest of this, the broader your cultural knowledge, the broader your ethical and spiritual knowledge, the better you can engage this technology. And so I sort of have a hope that what's going to open up is a lot of what Gordon said on a much larger perspective in education, because this AI is not a change or a disruption, it's a reckoning. It's a reckoning for all in higher education, for all the boring tests and 5-page papers people have made people do year after year. And my view, I'll kind of leave it this, is that speaking to all the teachers in the room, this is our responsibility. AI is not about what do we make the students do. It's not about restricting the students or creating rules and laws. There's some of that. But AI is about all of us taking a deep look at what we're doing as educators and saying, how can we use this technology and adapt to the future to get much better at what we do? And I think that this is highly inspirational, highly informative. This is recorded. This will be available. And the hope is that soon we can now do some more of these in a much deeper level and spend a lot more time, particularly on the things that Gordon talked about. I'd like to spend a lot more time unpacking each of those issues. So for everybody, thank you so much for coming today on behalf of Sofia University. I want to thank Roland and his team in marketing for setting all this up, Lloyd and IT and his team for helping, but most particularly express my gratitude for all the hard work of Robert Strohmeyer and Gordon Montgomery for what they've done. Gentlemen, thank you for all of your hard work. And we're out of time, and we will hopefully do this again very soon. Thanks, everybody.